Welcome to Real Girl Talk Podcast Radio. Welcome back to Real Girl Talk Podcast Radio. I am your host, Sherry Ricard. I am a medical professional, author, adversity recovery specialist, and co-founder of Silver Lining Wellness Company. I love sharing my faith and bringing you fascinating guests, Friday Fire messages, thinking outside the box, sharing ideas for business, beauty, and lifestyle abundance, and always committed to keeping it real. Now let's level up and let's dive in. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the podcast. My guest today, Vanessa Simpkins, has led thousands of women in her private mastermind programs. Her work has been seen on Fox, ABC, CBS, and NBC television. She is passionate about teaching women how to overcome fear and thrive. And we are so blessed to have her with us today. Hello, Vanessa. You look beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Sherry. Thanks for having me.
You know, I am really excited to talk to you because we were just talking before we started recording here for everybody else. And I'm just I found myself just getting so into your story. I was like, wait a minute, I forgot we have an audience. We need to share all of this information. But I want you to just kind of introduce yourself and what you do, and then just continue. Let's keep talking about the story you were telling me and what you've been going through. I love the part about the mountains and meeting the mountain man, but we'll save that.
Juicy part, yeah.
Did you hear that, lady? She's going to tell you how to meet a mountain man. But I want you to share that story. But just kind of introduce yourself and tell everybody what it is that you do, Vanessa.
Well, thank you. I have been working with women for over a decade. I wrote a book, Take Your Power Back Now, which became an international bestseller, landed me a Fox, ABC, NBC television, teaching women about how to turn their lemons into lemonade, share your secrets and, take your shame and bring it into the sacred, and teaching women in business, coaches, healers, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, how to break through visibility blocks, heal shame. And it started with, this book, which was about exiting a toxic relationship. I was in a hotel room one night and both really drunk with my boyfriend at the time, threw me across the room, woke up 2 inches from a big vase. And I thought, that's the end of me. Ooh. Escaped to the taxi. And I said, God, why is this happening to me? And Sherry, it was like in the movies where you hear this big booming voice, so you can help women not fall into the same patterns. And then I started crying because I was like, oh, no, I don't want to talk about emotional abuse. I just want to run around with my really safe from bankrupt to making $900 a day selling mops book. That was my first book. So I sat on this for 5 years. And then when the book finally came out, it launched a global movement. I've made over $12 million in the last 7 years. I've had the sheer blessing of working with some amazing women, running masterminds, retreats in Hawaii. I'm from Canada originally. And 2020 hit and my marriage was really in a lot of trouble. I woke up with this booming, $350,000 a month business through $3.5 million in, 2019. It looked really good online, but I was dying inside. I was so overworked and almost to the point of burnout. My CFO was like, you better take a break because we all think you're going to have a heart attack. And so I moved up here to the mountains and, I had so much pain in my body. I wasn't able to do yoga. I wanted to have a child. And my ex-husband had 3 kids, 3 wonderful kids, but a lot of drama with his ex-wife, 6 years going on. And I remember going to the yoga studio. I hired a yoga dance instructor because I knew I wouldn't do yoga on my own. I was just crying all the time. Right. And I didn't like my life anymore. I felt like everyone was benefiting except me. I felt like trapped in what I'd created. I remember leaving the yoga studio and thinking to myself, if I just got hit by a car, that would be a good way out of this mess.
Yeah.
And my sister was like, oh my gosh, you're depressed. And I was like, is that what depression is like? Like, how the heck did I get here? Should I go get some pills from a doctor? I'm like, oh, hell no, I'm a healer. Like, I'm going to.
Right.
So I hired somebody to work on trauma, looking at, becoming whole really. And looking at all the ways that I was rescuing and abandoning myself to keep love close to me. And so started this radical journey, of this next evolution of me here birthing through, but the guilt from, leaving a marriage and the guilt of trying to let go of this radically popular coaching program that benefited so many women and a team of people that were so dedicated. And I was like, there's more. Like, this is not all there is to it. There's more here for me.
Right.
And I think as women, we can either live this life at like 30% or 50% and numb ourselves to our feelings, which is what I was doing. It stays in the body. So it's, I left my marriage. I dramatically transformed my business. 7 weeks after I got separated, I met this amazing mountain man, super sexy, masculine, cracked my freaking heart wide open. I'm on this, oh my God.
Like, did you literally meet him on the mountain?
So this is a crazy story. When I hired this trauma coach, she's like, what's your goal in the next 6 months? I'm like, I'm going to, meet my next dude. He's going to come knock on my front door. And I found this journal that I'd written when I was living in Hawaii about my dude can fix my car, can build me a house, have these sexy tattoos, we live in Hawaii, and all that stuff, and what do you know? The front door to my house is the mountain. So I got separated on Thanksgiving. I spent Thanksgiving on my own. I don't know anybody here. I'm in the mountains with like dogs, my guns, and the chickens in the backyard. You know what I mean? Like, that's about it. I spent Christmas by myself, New Year's by myself. My birthday is January 9th. So I'm like, well, I may as well go enjoy it by myself. Went skiing and I met him. He picked me up on his skidoo on the mountain. And he's also divorced.
Wow.
It's like cosmic mirrors, I would call this relationship. It's been... And then, what happens when you meet that kind of love, it just cracks you open. And I can never be the same person again. And I thank God for that. I would never want to.
Isn't it interesting that you think when you're leaving a relationship that what if I never find anyone? What if I can't meet anyone like that person. I don't connect with that person. Well, if you were so connected to the person in the first place, you wouldn't want to be leaving the relationship, and then all of a sudden God sends somebody to your life. And I know women that, have been divorced for a long time and they still haven't found that one person. And if they've been told that they set their standards too high or, I don't think we set our standards too high. I think it's just really the connection that God has planned for us. And a lot of times it's something that we have to work on within ourselves before we connect with someone else. And I had that for a while. We talked about my son, Bryant, that passed away in a car wreck when he was 17. And I really shut myself off from a lot of people. And when you said you thought about just, crashing into a tree or a pole or whatever, and as sad as that sounds, I have thought that and more. And yes, it's depression. It's very scary. Have I actually thought, okay, I'm now going to drive the car into the tree? No. But you think about those things because I never really thought I was ever going to have any healing from Bryant until I realized that I was doing his memory and his honor and injustice by staying in that misery hole, because that was not my son. My son was happy and enjoyed life. And, he was just a great kid. And he would be furious with me if I lived that way. And so I totally relate to that depression, and where no matter what's going on in your life, when something tragic hits, because everything was fantastic in my life. Everything was going great until my son died. And then all of a sudden I could not get my life back on track. I just felt like there was nothing for me anymore. And and that's really interesting how you had the ability to go off into the mountains and be alone, because I'll tell you, a lot of my family probably wished I would have gone to the mountains and stayed away for a while, because I was not fit to be around. Literally was not fit to be around. So finish telling us the story. So you meet this wonderful mountain man and you have this relationship, and how are you saving women? Are you teaching women how to meet mountain men now, or are you just
so fun. I want to touch about what you shared, because when grief happens, grief is like a big pile of shit with a really big bow on the top of it. And we don't see that bow until we come through it on the other side. I mean, loss of identity, when you lose somebody, they say that a divorce, a move, an end of a career, a loss of a loved one, a family member, your parents, your child. I mean, these are massive portals of transformation and grief. And so, this idea that women think that this is as good as it's going to get. I talk a lot about standards and serenity, and they don't talk to you about all the chaos that happens in between setting the
Right.
standard and living in the unknown and literally watching everything burn.
Mm.
And so, when I continue the story, when I bought this house, I went to a yoga retreat up here and I saw myself with a child on my hip in a basket and a little cat under a tree in a garden with a bunch of animals. And I
Wow.
bought the first dang house I saw. And I bought it for the trees. I have these 200-foot tall trees here.
Wow.
And I bought it so fast, I didn't realize there was a train in the backyard. And oh my God, like that was so symbolic of my life. It's a train, like out of control
Right.
train. Now we call
Right.
it the love train. If it comes by, you're going to hear it. It's at 4 honks. But the
Wow.
synchronicity of when it comes and honks is like just this magical thing. That's the whole area is very magical. So in the backyard, in the back acre, let's call it my subconscious, there was these 2 dead trees. It cost me like $13,000 to cut these. They were symbolic of me and my ex-husband that were dead. And also very symbolic of the reflections, the people that were running my company that were also reflections of him and I. It took 2 years. Dylan helped me, my partner helped me, excavate, burn. I mean, even today, there's still yard workers. They're pulling out the last logs out of these 2 trees. It's been such a process. And what I want to share with women is that this idea that it's never going to get better, that's not true. It will get better to the extent that you're courageous enough to go inside and heal those parts of yourself.
Right.
I do a lot of shadow work and reparenting my inner child, really healing my nervous system, trauma work, excavating these reflections, because life is, we live in a reflectionary universe, and that's a law. So you become whole and life reflects that. That's the way it works. There's no way around it. You can watch YouTube videos, read books, eat ice cream until the day you die. They're not going to change anything. You can talk to your girlfriends, and most people resist going in and doing this work because there is so much pain. All of these people that have like chronic illnesses. I had this neck pain for 3 years, 3 springs. This is the first spring it's not happened. 3 years in a row. I had such calamity, like bang, my neck would give out, couldn't walk. I was like, what is this? Forget about working out. I gained a bunch of weight. And, the trauma lives in the body. So we're never taught this in school of like how to process emotions.
Right.
We're not taught like the really important things in school. Like, hello. And so the body speaks to us, but are we listening? And intimacy, this is my next, this is the journey, the trip I'm on now, wow. Intimacy is always available to us, but how are we meeting it? Somebody asks you like, well, how are you today? And you're in the grocery line, you're like, oh yeah, good. Meanwhile, you're like, oh my God, I'm dying inside, But if you had the courage to say that, to share that, the magic and the people that meet these angels, that like people that give you these uplifting stories. And so, a big part of my work has always been, and it still is, helping women heal their shame, right? And that's really why people hide out and don't speak out. That's why businesswomen suffer with visibility, right? You can't really market and sell yourself if you're not out there sharing the story, turning your lemons into lemonade.
Right.
And then there's this whole other dimension and level now about intimacy and healing shame around sexuality, shame in our bodies. Shame. I did this photo shoot for like International Women's Day, and it's a little bit racy. You see my boobs. Okay. Yeah, this is what I want. Like my prayer for every woman to meet like such a deep man with integrity that just cracks your freaking heart open.
Aww.
Because the creativity, I've never, like, I can be loving in the face of me having my expectations not met, disappointments. Like it's such a gift. And so I put this picture out there. And the feedback I got, was it ever interesting? And it's not to put my boobs out on Facebook, okay? There's a war going on in Russia. Who cares about my boobs on Facebook?
Right.
It's not about that. It was like, I don't want to live in fear anymore. I don't want to live in fear, my own fear of judgment. I want to be all of me fully expressed. And it's like, that's it. That's what I want. And so the interesting thing is, was the reflections I got from family and friends. My aunt was like, oh my God, what are you doing? I know your coaching business. Did you get your boobs done? What are you doing? What are you doing promoting for a gym? And I was like, I just responded to her, shame, and these are my real boobs, by the way, shame. And so it's like, wow, to see the projections, right? We need to own our projections because we're always this one consciousness that can't really see itself. So we project out there. right? So I'm receiving these projections. I'm like, wow, they're reflections of me. So what part of me is shaming me? And then my mother, she's like, oh, the picture is gorgeous, but your eyebrows, they're terrible. She started going off on the eyebrows. And I was like, wow, Mom, this has nothing to do with my eyebrows.
Wow.
I'm so sorry that you're so critical of yourself. So as children, we get rejected. And our parents are doing the best they can. All right. Let's just be honest. And there's big trauma. Somebody gets sexually assaulted or held at gunpoint. And there's also little trauma, little T trauma, which is just somebody didn't see you. Somebody wasn't there for you. And your nervous system got too much energy, and the end, like short fuse, but that lives in the body. And then we develop, coping strategies to live, to survive. So having, compassion for those parts of ourselves. I noticed, I was like, wow, so this has nothing to do with my eyebrows. And I got to see like this, I'm so sorry. You're criticizing yourself so much.
Yeah.
And she didn't know what to do. She kept going on about it. And I was like, I'm going to hang up. Like, I love you, but I'm really not about to have a 20-minute conversation about my eyebrows. It has nothing to do with this. So you start healing your trauma, and it heals everybody in your family. It's the most incredible gift. As I realized, wow, how much had I been criticizing myself? Because when you get this kind of rejection as a kid, we have abandonment, fear of rejection. We can't reject the parent because we need them to survive. So we reject ourselves. Right. So this process of becoming whole again, feeling all of those really horrifying feelings, which, by the way, leave in like 90 seconds, and then watching your life reflect this wholeness, and it happens fast. It's been the most incredible magic carpet ride. And that's really the journey that I want to invite women into, is like turning their tragic. We can either have a tragic carpet ride or a magic carpet ride.
I think too, you were touching on something right there about how she was being very critical of that picture. And it brought me back to something that I was listening to yesterday. And I love Joyce Meyer and Terry Seville Foy and all these ladies of ministry. They're so awesome. And I was listening to a podcast, and I can't remember who was the podcast host, but she talks about all the different women in the Bible, and she'd covered Ruth and Esther and all these different women, and talked about their strength and how strong they were and how vulnerable they were and how independent they had to be, and all of these things. And it was real interesting because one of the things that they were talking about was we pay so much attention to what other people's opinions are of us, we forget what our own opinion is. And, or my favorite one is when somebody says, well, I have a word from you from God. And then they tell you the word and you go, that doesn't align with me at all. Like that doesn't align with what I'm feeling or my spirit. And the Bible actually says a word from God is actually a confirmation. You already feel it. You already know it. You're already aligned with it. And if somebody else says it, it's a confirmation to confirm what you're already feeling. But sometimes people will come to you and you'll go, what are they talking about? Like that has nothing to do with what I'm feeling, or I'm not aligned with that at all, because we're so busy having an opinion about someone else's life, about someone else's eyebrows or someone else's hair, or what someone else is doing. Just like I was telling you before, when I decided to be a market partner with Amber, Nicole Miller with Monat, the first thought that came into my head was, I don't want to do a multi-level marketing. I have enough going on. I have a podcast show, I have a lot of ad sponsors. I've got a CBD company. I have all this stuff, but it just kept pulling me. Like I kept feeling pulled towards it because I didn't know enough about it to realize it was nothing like I thought it was. But I had this preconceived idea, and I immediately went back to, well, people are going to think that's stupid, or nobody's going to be interested, or I don't have time for that, because I had this preconceived idea of what it was, which
fear
it wasn't.
Fear of judgment.
Yeah,
and then the ego, the wounded ego, the wounded ego is going to have you play your life as a victim versus a warrior.
Right.
And it is resistance, right? The fear of judgment as a kid. If you get judged, well, you die because you get kicked out of the tribe. So a lot of my work has been around understanding the ego's protective mechanism, how it separates us from being this loving expression, which is always here, always available to us. And it's like you said, women who are being offered these business opportunities, or like this Monat company or this MLM company. Okay. Or wanting to start a coaching business or whatever business they want to start. Oh my God, the naysayers, the judgment you're going to get from family and friends. It's like, Can you be strong and confident in your yes, regardless of, because it's going to happen. And the more success that you have, the more haters you have. It's the duality of life. Do it anyways. And it's this, I love what I love about your story is that you are living your fullness. You're not living at 30%. Sherry, you're like, I'm playing full out. Here it is. All the things.
This is all the things. It's funny because when I was way back, I remember in the Miss Louisiana USA pageant 100 years ago, and I walked in and there was this big panel of judges, and I had never done panel judging. It was usually you walk in and you have one judge and then you move to the next one, but it was the first panel. And I was like, oh, wow, they're all staring at me and they're all talking to me. And I sat down and I had my whole interview. And I remember this one gentleman right in front of me. And he said, you know what I like about you? He said, I really believe that you're real. I believe that you are and this was years ago. He says, I believe that you're real. And I believe everything you're saying is authentic. And I trust what you're saying. Like, I trust you. I feel drawn to you. And I don't know why, Vanessa, I even said it. I don't even know if it was the right thing to say, but I said, well, you know what? With me, what you see is what you get, baby. I was like, should I have even said that? But I actually got the highest score in interview, not so much in swimsuit, but I did an interview. And it was because I'm so honest to a fault. Sometimes I have to be really careful. My friends know, okay, if I ask your opinion, I got to sit back and get ready because I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to tell you how I feel. That doesn't mean I'm right. You asked me how I feel about it. I'm going to tell you. And I'm also going to tell you about how I feel about what I'm doing and how I feel about a certain situation that has to do with me. And I may ask your opinion, and I expect for you, Vanessa, anybody, if I ask you, just be honest. Don't go.
It's very hard for a lot of people, especially people that are people pleasers. Women speaking their truth. My first book I wrote about authenticity being the new currency in life and business. And it's an example of when you have healed your shame, like, I had got nothing left to prove at this point. I've been to the top of that mountain. I made a bunch of money. I'm a success. It's like, what do I want now?
Right.
When you heal your shame, you can be authentic. I can sit here and share my story with you. I've been like chewing on it, digesting it, burp, fart, for the last 2 years. But finally I'm like, okay, wow, here we go. Here's the blossoming after the dark winter,
Yeah.
And so I feel like authenticity, being able, there's communication skills. Yes. Being vulnerable is really scary for a lot of women. But it is such power in being authentic because it really screams, I don't need your approval. I don't need you to love me. I mean, these are the three things that the ego uses to pull us out, right? Needing safety outside the self, needing control outside the self, needing approval outside the self, right? So when we're able to, and women have told me this for years, they're like, my God, I love that you just swear, and I love how real you are, and this is the only way to be for me. I think we share a similar, thread of maybe radical honesty. It might be abrasive to some people, but you can't stop your fullness just because some people can't take it. I know a lot of women are afraid of that. Oh my God, it's going to be too much,
Right.
And I back to this picture, there was two other reflections. My sisters came and said, oh my gosh, Vanessa, you look gorgeous, but what about these perverts online? Like, I'm like, wow. So you hide part of your sexuality because you're afraid of perverts. Huh. That's interesting.
And projected it onto you.
Well, everyone's doing that. We're all, with unconsciously, some people are unconscious or consciously. I mean, they're concerned. It's nice, but you can see the reflection. We're all just mirrors here, one consciousness reflecting, our wounds reflecting our light. Quite a magic carpet ride.
I believe that we're supposed to be here in order to whatever tragedy and whatever we go through, just like everything that you've been through, everything that I've been through. When you're sharing that, you're vulnerable enough to share that and help someone else with whatever it is. I don't care if it's beauty on the outside. If somebody can help you, listen. If it's beauty on the inside, if it's confidence, if it's grief, if it's pain, if it's divorce, if it's whatever it is, if you've been through it I believe that it is your responsibility to help another woman or another person go through the exact same thing and show them how you came out on the other side.
I
Show
agree.
them how you healed from it. But instead, a lot of times what we do is we keep it in because we really don't want to talk about it.
It's a shame. That's why I love, helping women with their story. I do a lot of copywriting, channel people's like program names. It's a lot of women have, my clients have, I just got it's a decade. So I'm watching these clients come back to me and invite me on their ABC television show to interview me. I'm like, wow, like amazing things to watch women blossom and unfurl over a decade of work.
Nice.
And they kept me going, in my darkest days, they'd send me messages. I feel like the story that you never wanted to share is the story you must share. I mean, all these coaches talk about like your dream clients, and it's like, blah, yeah. Don't talk to me about marketing and Facebook ads. But the ability to be vulnerable, to heal your shame, will allow you to speak your truth and share that story. And that's what attracts your soul clients. They resonate with that. And so it really comes down to healing shame. I mean, that ignites your creativity. It ignites your visibility. It allows you to be vulnerable and safe. And I'm right with you. It makes all of the pain like worthwhile.
Two, I think there are a lot of people, and social media does not help, because social media, what we put out on social media is so much of the fluff. And, somebody got married or had a baby and, we went to Disney World and all these great things, but you don't see everything else. And there is so much more to everybody than what they put on social media. And I will tell you that I knew someone that basically knew someone, told me this story, and I cried. There was a woman that had reached out to my friend and she couldn't get in touch with her and wanted to talk to her. And it was a couple of days later, she committed suicide. And in her letter, she had put that one of the things that kept her depressed was that seeing that everyone else had such a wonderful life except for her. And where she got that from was social media. Everyone else had such a wonderful life except for her. Which she didn't know is that's absolutely not true. I mean, we don't put out there everything else. I think that it's wonderful that some of the women that are into beauty and skincare lines will get on and show you no makeup, and this is what it looks like after and all that. I think that's wonderful that they can do that. I think they're being very honest when they show you those things. Do I believe that you have to do it in order to do a beauty line or whatever? No, absolutely not. But I think it's great that you can be authentic and show. So many women won't. I think it's wonderful that people can come on my show and share that they've been through divorce and the hurts and the pains. I've been through divorce. I was married for 12 years. We had 2 children. One of them passed away. And I mean, I've been through it. I mean, if you make a list of all the crap that can possibly kill you, I've fulfilled it. And I'm still here by the grace of God, because I do believe that part of my healing has been the sharing and the teaching and the healing to women that want to receive it. A lot of us don't want to receive it though, Vanessa. A lot of us will reject
there's payoffs.
it.
This is exactly what I covered in my masterclass this morning. I did a masterclass called Claim Yourself, Unleash and Embody Your Divine Feminine. And I was talking about the payoffs for staying small. There are payoffs for not living fully, for not being intimate with self, there's payoffs for having the extra weight, for not launching the business, for not booking the trip. There's payoffs. And it's, it again is this wounded ego that while it's unconscious, because nobody would purposefully sabotage themselves. This is unconscious. Okay.
Yeah.
And coming with grace, kindness, and understanding towards these parts of yourself, they're just trying to protect you. Right? This is really all it is. But until those payoffs, this will give you some good insight. Until that becomes conscious, that wounded ego is driving your train. I like to tell, become aware of it, help women become aware of that, and then say, go sit in the trunk, go sit in the back.
right,
in the trunk, or go sit in the back and wave. You're not allowed to touch my steering wheel. You're not even allowed to change the dial on the radio. And you can't even hold the map, and you can't sit in the front seat. Get out, get in the back.
yeah,
And then your soul, your purpose, God consciousness drives your life. It's not the fear. It's not, the payoffs for staying small. How many women
right,
stay in, a job because it's not their purpose or not their passion, but it pays the bill because they're afraid that they will not, whatever, fill in the blank. They won't succeed at this new venture. It's scary
right,
living, starting something new, birthing something new is scary. It's
right.
terrifying
Because
being
it's
in the
comfortable.
unknown.
It's
Yeah.
comfortable. They're comfortable there. They've been there for 15 years.
It's comfortable, uncomfortable is what it is.
Right.
And
It's
same thing in
comfortably
relationships.
uncomfortable.
Same thing in relationships. Get into your routine, you get into the familiar. And so the process of like death and rebirth, I think, is something that needs to be talked about more, because
Right.
this is in my human designs, like one of the gates of new beginnings that I have. And I can look at my life similar to yours, that I've moved, I've lived in Hawaii, I've lived in Canada, I've lived in Costa Rica, I've lived now in Northern California, I've started businesses, I've failed, I've gone bankrupt, I've gone divorced. Like, there's all of these constant changes, and we've had
Right.
just a calamity of change right now in the last 2 years since this pandemic. People have died. People have died of COVID. People have lost businesses. People have lost relationships. I mean,
Right.
there's so much grief and loss. How do we deal with this? How do we, process this out of our bodies? How do we unite again with, the power of consciousness of God? How do we
Right.
bring that out there in the world? I think really God's knocking on a lot of people's hearts right now, and it's still going to be scary. It's
Right.
not like it's easy just because God knocks in your heart.
Right.
Showing up and taking the actions and showing up, action.
Right.
Part of the law of attraction. Walking that path is it's for the brave and the courageous, and it's not convenient. I hate these like spiritual people that are like, oh my God, it's a sign I shouldn't do it. It's like, no, it's a sign you have resistance, and like,
Yeah.
it's not convenient, and it's so worth it, and it's terrifying, and it's all of it. It's the pain, it's the pleasure, it's the, you can't have great love without getting your heart broken. I mean, that's inside of that. That's part of the process. You're not going to have a booming, wildly successful, multi-million-dollar business without failure. So what? Failure is a lesson. Success is a lesson applied. And can we have grace, kindness, and compassion towards ourselves in this birthing, in this death process, in this birthing the new process?
Yeah. And you touched on something, because you said the sign, oh, it's a sign. And I think sometimes people, oh, well, if it's not happening easily, then it's a sign that I shouldn't do it. No, God's delays are not his denials necessarily. A lot of times it's something that you need to be working on yourself before it comes to pass. People are so worried about, well, he needs to fix this, or my husband needs to fix this, and our relationship would be better if he would just change. Well, maybe it's you, sweetheart.
Yep.
Maybe it's you that needs to
Yep.
change. And he needs to see that reflection of you changing
Yep.
before he does. We're so ready to put it on someone else that.
Well, it's a projection. The
Right.
first thing that my relationship heal your trauma coach told me, he was a chiropractor, tired of watching people with chronic illness, and he was like, there's more to this, and got into trigger work, healing your nervous system, breath work. He says, pretend that, so many people call him up and they're like, oh my God, he has to change, she has to change, and he's like, pretend they don't even exist. Oh my God, that's really radical. Yeah, because it has nothing to do with them. It's your reflection that you don't like.
Right.
So go fix your hole inside. Because Sherry, I was making millions of dollars, and I could have made 10 more millions of dollars, and it still wouldn't have filled my hole. It would have never been enough. You can't fill that hole with money or success or antiques. Okay. I got a lot of freaking antiques in my garage. I love antiques. Okay. Or jewelry, or shopping online, or drinking alcohol, or name your fix or addiction, or watching Netflix all night long. It's never going to fill the hole. You're not going to get it out there. You get it in here. You give it to yourself. You become
100%.
And that reflects in either the person that you're with transforms and rises, or somebody new enters the scene. It's a law.
Right. And I'm a true believer when we're talking about grief, and grief meaning a lot of things. It can be, like you said, loss of business, or you're in a divorce. It's all grief. It doesn't have to be, loss by death, but when you're going through the grief, until you get to the final acceptance stage, you can't get to phase 2, which is the remaking of life. And in order to remake life, we have to accept the divorce, accept the pain, accept the fact that they're gone, accept the fact that the business is gone. Are you going to rebuild it, or are you going to move on? Because you have to accept it either way. You can't just sit there and stay in that depression and anger phase. You have to accept the fact that that business is gone, and you either have to rebuild or you have to move on. And when you do that, then you can remake it. You can remake life. You can remake where you are right now for bigger and better things. And sometimes we get stuck.
I love that. Of course we get stuck. It's hard. Nobody teaches us how to move our emotions and process things in school. I don't know what they're teaching in school, but I think they're getting better.
They're not teaching good stuff in California. I know that.
No, they don't teach you the really important things, like,
right.
And can you have forgiveness for yourself? Can you have forgiveness for others?
Right. We've all done things that we, wish we could take back. And I believe we reap what we sow. However, there are things that you can do to make up for those. And you can always apologize, and you can forgive yourself, just like you can forgive someone else. You don't have to actually pick up the phone and forgive someone, by the way. Anybody listening? You can forgive them in your heart, write it down on a paper, burn it out in the backyard. Forgiveness is for you. It's not necessarily for the other person, unless you want to go to them in their face and say, make them feel better. But if you just want to forgive and move on, that is for you. I know that I've had to do that recently with a friend. I've had to just forgive and move on. Just because I forgive you doesn't mean that you have all this access to my life now. I live and learn, but I don't hold those grudges or in any ill will, because all I do is hurt myself. I'm not hurting you, because you don't even know I'm doing it.
That's embodying love, right?
Right.
Can you keep your heart open? This is a trip I'm on. This is the new practice. Can I keep my heart open regardless, even when my expectations aren't met, even when I get disappointed?
Vanessa, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I really do. I have loved talking to you, and I'm excited about the book. So tell everybody where they can get your book and where they can find you.
Yeah, well, you can pick up my book, Take Your Power Back Now, on Amazon. You can visit me on my website, takeyourpowerbacknow.com, or find me on Facebook. I'm on YouTube as well, but I mostly hang out on Facebook. You can send me a private message there. Join my Next Evolution of You Facebook group. We have over 17,000 women, rad conversations about transformation, embodying your divine feminine, healing, business, all the things, relationships. And I have so enjoyed this juicy conversation, Tree. Thank you for having this podcast and taking the time and creating this group.
Thank you, Vanessa. We're going to stay in touch. Today's episode is sponsored by Monette. Anti-aging hair care and skincare, 30-day money-back guarantee, clinical proven results, all natural products. You can have Monette VIP discounts too. You can just go back to the show notes, click on the link there, or you can go to my Instagram, Real Girl Talk Podcast, and click in the bio link, Shop VIP Monette. Thank you for tuning in all the way through Real Girl Talk Show. Make sure you subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts. And if you happen to have iTunes, would you do me a favor and leave me a review on the show? I know you're going to leave me a 5-star, right? That's the way that I can reach more and more people around the world. Remember, whatever you wish to receive, you have to first give. And I know that you're the kind of person that wants to reach people all over the world and inspire them. You can copy this link and share it with your family and friends. Share it on social media. Remember, people need to be uplifted and inspired more than ever today. Thank you so much for being a part of Real Girl Talk community. And until next time, go after your dreams, create your vision, and truly be the person God intended you to be. Healthy, happy, whole, and full of life. Love you.